I played Shantae, Half-Genie Hero, which was for me the first game that I ever played in the Shantae series. If you're not aware, Shantae is a long-running game series and has been going on since the Game Boy Color that over time started off in complete obscurity but has been clawing its way out and has now become relatively popular to the point where they recently had enough popularity to actually finish up their cancelled GBA sequel, which is going to be a future review because I actually have the Game Boy Advance cart itself. But before I got to that, I wanted to revisit the game that got me interested in this series in the first place, that being Half-Genie Hero. I remember seeing the Kickstarter, and I was a small enough backer that I was able to get a code for the game, but not enough to get on the credits itself. Well, for this review, I did play Shantae Half-Genie Hero Ultimate Edition. I can't remember if there's a major difference between it and the regular edition, but I thought I'd just make that clear. In the main game mode, Shantae is dealing with a myriad of different issues, the main one being that of Risky Boots, who invades the town and ended up getting Shantae fired. Now, your uncle is looking to build this dynamo, with the intent being that with that, Shantae will be able to keep the town safe from pirate invasions once and for all. It turns out that when Risky stole the blueprints for this dynamo at the beginning of the game, she actually swapped them out for a version that can invert good and evil magic, which could turn Shantae and the entire genie realm into evil toys for her to play with. I'm not going to pretend like it's the most in-depth story of all time, but it's enough to be the general baseline that motivates you to get from stage to stage. Not only that, but all the little bosses throughout have their own specific objectives. Techno Baron has, for instance, been making a counterfeit mermaid monster chow business. If I remember correctly, Ammo Baron was using Squid Baron as merchandising to fund evil deeds. And there's a new character, Holly Lingerbean, who is using the memories that she sucks from the townsfolk in order to keep her own memory alive. Now, you might notice that these don't have much or if anything to do with Risky Boots' storyline, and to an extent, I think I kind of like that. You don't need every storyline to have every single villain being like, haha, you will never get the new proper blueprints for the dynamo, the genie realm is over! Rather than try to make one giant story, I think it's better that Shantae focused on several smaller stories for this one. Now, in terms of gameplay, Shantae has several things that she can do. She's obviously going to be running and jumping much like your standard platformers, which the controls are excellent, and she attacks with this hair whip attack, which is really satisfying, especially as you upgrade it later down the line. But throughout the game, she'll unlock these transformations, which vary in terms of usefulness, but let me tell you, they are a lot of fun. The monkey form is so tiny and jumps so high that coupled with the wall grabbing makes it a joy to use when I'm trying to speed through a level. But the monkey has no form of attack, unless you use the monkey bullet, which requires you to grab onto a wall, meaning that a lot of the time the monkey form is quite vulnerable. There's the bat form, which allows you an easy way of flying along the level, but you can only move horizontally, not vertically, so you have to pick your positioning well. Whereas there's a harpy that can move up and down and all around, but has a big flapping motions, kind of like controlling a free-roaming Flappy Bird, so it's not good in tight environments. And there's more than that, obviously. In fact, I'll give you a quick life hack. If you want to get all the upgrades easily, you'll want to get the one where you can become like this big jug that can shake money out, because if you do that and then you go to the bathhouse, by the way, restores your health and magic, and using the jug dance uses magic. You get what I'm saying? You do that, you buy the like max attract thing to attract gems to you, and you can stay in the bathhouse and just keep shaking gems loose and attracting them. It's a great source of infinite gems and means that you get overpowered super quickly. You can get all the upgrades that way. There are very few parts of the game that genuinely frustrated me. I'd say maybe the part where you're having to get away from that giant worm-looking thing in the desert, and the bit towards the end, though that is the final level, so I kind of give it a pass because there's always usually a little bit of frustration in the very last level. It's kind of testing your abilities. But Shantae and the different forms control incredibly, and the boss fights are all pretty fun. Not to mention the graphics for this game are genuinely really good. Say what you like about the character designs, because I know people love to dunk on those, but genuinely, the visuals are amazing. It's clear way forward, put a lot of their heart and soul into these games, and I think it really shows itself. The music as well is absolutely awesome. So just all around, I think this is an incredibly fun game. But that's not all. There isn't just the main game mode, there are several others in Shantae Half-Genie Hero that can extend your playtime by quite a considerable degree. There's Hero Mode, which is essentially New Game Plus, where you get to replay the adventure with all of the transformations unlocked, meaning that you're already starting out of the gate pretty much overpowered and can just blast through the game again, which I think is an absolute fun time. I've done it once or twice myself playing Hero Mode, and it's a great way to just get to re-enjoy the experience, but, you know, without having to start completely over from scratch. There's Hardcore Mode, which is essentially the Nightmare difficulty, which, as usual for me, whenever these games introduce a harder difficulty, for some reason, I don't know what it is, but whenever these kinds of difficulty modes show up, the main game mode will be bordering on easy. In fact, that's one thing about the main game, is that it is really quite easy in my opinion. Even before the exploit, the game was perfectly manageable. But the game goes from quite easy to suddenly strikingly difficult. But that's not all. There are 5 additional game modes on top of that. The Pirate Queen's Quest allows you to play as Risky Boots, with her own storyline and moveset, with her own upgrades and everything, which makes her a blast to play as, in my opinion. If I had to guess, some of her moves are probably based on that Pirate's Curse game I've yet to play. At some point I want to review all the Shantae games on the channel, but I think her moveset was a lot of fun. There was Friends to the End, where you play as Sky, Roy Tops and Bolo, and honestly I was a little bit split on this one, just because I find the switching between the different characters to be a little bit iffy, and oftentimes the abilities were a bit tedious, especially if I fell and had to redo a chunk of a level. Level 2 was very frustrating for that. Not impossible, just was a bit of a pain in the backside. And then there's 4 more modes with Shantae in. There's Ninja Mode, Beach Mode, Officer Mode, and Jammies Mode, all of which add different types of gameplay. The Ninja Mode is great if you want something a bit more fast-paced. The Beach and Jammies Mode are very similar to each other, though with the Beach Mode, you have a sunscreen meter where Shantae seems to burn up extremely quickly, and so you need to have sunscreen applied constantly, which admittedly makes things very tense, because not only are you just trying to get through the game, but you're having to keep an eye on this secondary meter at all times. With the Jammies mode, you don't have your regular attack because Shantae doesn't have her hair tied up, and your main way of attacking was going to be with these sheep. But honestly, the sheep can be extremely powerful. It was fun to just destroy the Tinker Slug with no trying at all. And then there's Officer Mode, which just takes WayForward's other game, Mighty Switch Force, and adds the mechanics to Half-Genie Hero. It's honestly a lot of fun. Shantae already controls really well, and I always had fun playing Mighty Switch Force, so combining the two actually does lend to a little bit of a fun experience. I did struggle a little bit because healing items felt hard to come by, and there were a few times that I did feel like I got a bit stuck because of that. But it wasn't like... But again, none of these challenges were insurmountable, and unlike Mighty Switch Force, you don't have to get every single one of the criminals in these levels. Even if you just get from point A to point B, you'll still get by just fine. It's just 100% completion that you'd be aiming for with that. Now, I should stress, with all these additional game modes, they do recycle a lot of content from the main game. You'll be battling the Tinker Slug pretty much every time, and if you were hoping for these game modes to be varied in more than just mechanics, for the most part, most of them are just essentially like Sonic ROM hacks, where all that's happened is they've added a different playstyle into things. Of course, there is some unique content added here and there, but these are more clearly meant to be stuff that, once you've exhausted the main game mode and you want to continue, these can give you a couple more hours of playtime. Overall, I think Shantae Half-Genie Hero is an absolute blast and worth checking out. With great gameplay, beautiful graphics, incredible music, and admittedly maybe way too many game modes so you can sink countless hours into it, I honestly think that it's an absolute treat. I'm hoping to review the other Shantae games on the channel soon, so if you enjoyed this, please be sure to hit the subscribe button and stay tuned.